Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. A demoniac who could not speak was brought to Jesus. And when the demon was driven out, the mute man spoke. The crowds were amazed and said, "Nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel." But the Pharisees said, "He drives out demons by the prince of demons." Jesus went around all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and curing every disease and illness. At the sight of the crowds, his heart was moved with pity for them, because they were troubled and abandoned, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. So ask the harvest master to send out laborers for his harvest." The Gospel of the Lord. Sometimes we can be like Jacob, and we can spend all night with God, wrestling with him about what we want in prayer, as opposed to what he is calling us to do for the sake of what is good for us and beautiful for us and best for our lives and our eternal lives. And here Jesus, it's funny, he's not telling the disciples at this point to go out all over the world and preach. He says, pray for more laborers. And it seems to be one of the primary tasks of the disciples to pray for more laborers. And so I was just thinking about this morning and wondering how often I myself even just pray for vocations. And would this be useful to just pray for vocations? Well, today we celebrate the feast of Saint Benedict, who is the father of Western monasticism, who saw to the building of monasteries that clumped people together and sort of isolated them, and they are, if you want to use the term a little bit, they're professional prayers. And what good is that? Well, there's a lot of prayer going behind the scenes and a lot of power being released from this type of prayer. Our dear sisters just up the road, across the river, at the Precious Blood Monastery, in my opinion, are doing very, very powerful work because they're on their knees for us. And prayer becomes vital, especially when you see that the healing message, the healing ministry of Jesus is done here by the fact that people brought someone to him. This demoniac who's mute is not able to get to Jesus by himself. Jesus chooses to empower the community to assist him and bring him. And this is what we do with our prayers. And what's interesting is, because of this, the mouth of this man is open. And because of this intercession of these people who brought him to Jesus, his mouth gets open, and now he can share his story. And he can proclaim the gospel, can't he? And just a few verses before this, just before this little section here, if you go in the Gospels, 2 blind men are healed. Why? Because somebody brought them to Jesus. And they're healed of their blindness, which is interesting, because the irony is so thick that while these guys are healed of their blindness and they can see, and they can see who did this to them, and they can see so they can proclaim about the one who did this to them, All the while, the Pharisees remain blind and they can't see because they believe that a demon is healing a demon. Isn't that amazing? But the power of intercession in all this is so rich. I read something this morning by Saint Teresa of Lisieux. I'll paraphrase it, but basically she says, you're all little Moses. You're like little Moseses. You're up on top of the mountain, and while you're up there, why don't you just take a look in heaven and see how many empty places are there and start praying.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquae meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit, alleluia.